Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to um, this live. And as you come in, I wish that you would get in the chat. If you're watching this after it's live, then you can comment down below. Leave me some feedback if you want to. But I really wish that you would for sure subscribe to this channel. I would um, I would love that. And if you are here live with me today, I would love to know who you are. And I would love to see you in the chat. But if you don't, that's okay. I'm still going to talk. This week, we are celebrating 26 years of being a church. I was thinking this morning as I was, contemplating doing this video. 26 years ago, my life looked a lot different than it does today. And, there's been a lot of changes, some good, a lot good, matter of fact, I should say that. And then some have just not been fun at all. And we're going to talk about all that. I don't know how long this is going to be. That's why I wanted to do it on YouTube. That's why it could be archived and just kept up, and you could go back and watch it. And once I get this adjusted, then you'll be happy, because I will be happy for sure. If you're just finding this for the first time, first of all, my name is Jack Midkiff. I was born in West Virginia, in Logan, West Virginia, Logan General Hospital on July 21st, 1969. Jackie Lee Midkiff. My dad was Jack. My mom was Doyle. I lived in Harts, West Virginia for 10, 11 years of my life, something like that. And we moved out of there when I was 10, 11, 12, something like that. And we moved to Sevierville, Tennessee. My dad was a coal miner in the coal mines of southern West Virginia. He got hurt. He couldn't work any longer. And quite frankly, just had to make a transition. Had to make a change. And so they did that. We moved to Sevierville, Tennessee. Never heard of Gatlinburg or Pigeon Forge before in our life. And that's the truth. We had heard of Knoxville. We drove through Knoxville just as the World's Fair was getting finished. And we started this new life. And it wasn't too long until I had always loved music, but during that time, I fell in love with music. And I think what happened, I look back on it now, and I think what happened is I was in my room a lot, not asking for anybody to feel sorry for me, but I remember going to the home, and at the home, there was a lot of kids there. It's called the Home for Children, and it was kids that have been displaced from their families for whatever reason. And so there was a lot of anger, bitterness, and pent up just fury in them. And I had my mom, I had my dad, I had my own bedroom, because they didn't, the establishment did not suggest that I room with anyone because of, things that could happen and things that, just anyway. But I can remember days that I would literally step out of like on a Saturday morning. I remember we hadn't been there too long, and I stepped out of the house, and these boys just come up and they just whooped me. They just whooped me because they wanted to. Hadn't done anything to them. And looking back, I think I probably at that moment started staying in my room more and started diving into my piano more and a little bit of guitar. The guitar playing come a little bit later than that, but I started just staying in there. And so I fell totally head over heels in love with music. So I did that. I got my first gig when I was about, I guess I was 15. I started playing on the streets in Pigeon Forge when I was 13. And then I got my first paying gig at 15. Um, Started playing at the Smoky Mountain Jubilee when I was 16. Then when I was 17, my dad passed away. That changed a lot. And when he passed away, my mother moved back to West Virginia, and she stayed in West Virginia quite a bit the latter part of my senior year. I was by myself more than not. She's a wonderful mother, and she did the very best she could, and I'm very grateful for what she did for me. So I'm not saying anything bad about that. But she was barely 50 years old, I think, when he died, and she was a stay-at-home mom. Other than working at the home for children, she'd been a stay-at-home mom my whole life, and I think all of hers. And so she was scared and she was grieving, and she moved back to West Virginia. And but she did keep some stuff there during during the last part of my senior year. I rented my own apartment, and then on my graduation night, her and my sister and brother-in-law, um, they all moved back to West Virginia, and I was working a job. So I was 17 at that moment, and just, a lot of stuff going on in my life. And then at 20, I'm going to fast forward through those next few years, because I always tell everybody I was Baptist till I was about 7 or 8. And from about 9 until 17, I was Church of God. And then from 17 to 20, I was heathen. So we're going to skip that part. I would never lie about it, but it isn't something that I fantasize the past about. It was what it was. I played nightclubs. I made it through it, and I'm very thankful for it. It was just, it was a season of my life that I learned a whole lot about a whole lot. Then at 20, I met LaDonna, and life started changing in a different kind of way at that moment, because I had someone to do life with. And at 22, Jackie Lee was born. And there's a lot I'm leaving out of this story, because it is not about just my life. I just want to give you a timeline up to starting the church. But we moved to Aurora, Illinois for about 4 months just for work, and then moved back. He was born in 91, and I was at that time, I accepted my call to preach in 1990. And in 91, I was youth pastoring in a local church. In 93, we left that church and we started attending another church. And we were there from 93 until 98. And during that time, I was licensed as a preacher, a minister. About 1990, because from 93 to 98, we were at the same church, but we also moved to Nashville during that time. And we would come back to church often, sometimes every weekend. So we were very faithful to our church, even though we lived in Nashville. But when it was about 1997, we started singing. Jackie Lee was 6, and this young lady that traveled with us a lot, and turned out that her dad and mom helped us start High Praises Church. She was 12, and it just was something that I didn't expect and wasn't looking for, but it happened. And all of a sudden we were on the road, and we were traveling to all these different churches, and we did that for a year plus. And when we did that, we saw a lot of different atmospheres in a lot of different churches. And one thing that I noticed that was pretty general across the board was um, sometimes you go into a church, and if it was a white church, it was all white. And if it was a black church, it was all black. Um, if it was a Baptist church, it was one certain way. If it was a Pentecostal church, it was one certain way. And to be perfectly honest with you, I don't know where I got this in my life, because I was raised the way I was raised, and I had a wonderful childhood. But as far as church goes, we always went to the same kind of churches with the same kind of people. Um, but for some reason, and as I've gotten older, I just think that it's probably something that God placed in me individually. But there was this big, huge need for me to create a spot where it didn't matter what you look like, act like, smell like, talk like. It didn't matter what background you came from. It didn't matter if you were doing everything right or everything wrong. I wanted to create that place, and we did. So we um, we found ourselves in 1998. The pastor of the church that we were attending told me about this church that was looking for a pastor, and at that time we were, now remember, I was called to preach in 90 and never did really feel like I was ready to preach until 98. And when I say I didn't feel like I was ready to preach, my wife didn't feel like she was ready to be the pastor's wife. We just didn't feel, there was times I wanted to even, and she didn't. And then I got to where I was like, and don't take that wrong. It wasn't in and out of church. We never stopped serving God, and our love for God got even stronger during that time. But it was a thing of not really wanting to pastor a church. Well, this church was looking for a pastor. We went, and it didn't work out. No need to go into those details either, but it just didn't work out. Different views on expansion and growth, different views on the kingdom, different views on almost everything. So I remember it was the middle of October, and that's when the decision was kind of made that I wasn't going to pastor that church. And we had a singing appointment that we had on the books for a long, long time. So that particular Sunday, we went and did that. And then it was coming up on the last week of the month in 1998 in October. And there was several people that had started coming from. I will tell you this about that little church experience. When we went there, they had, I think, 12 people, I think. And they were one of those that was very adamant in making sure they cleared the roll and all that kind of stuff. And so there was 12 people on the books, 12 people that would come to church. And in 3 weeks, we were up to about 60 people. Well, put it like this, we had like 60 people in the third week of me being there. And that's when we kind of figured out that we were on different paths as far as uh, uh, where we were going as a church. And so we parted ways. And the very next Sunday, then we went and we sang at this homecoming or whatever it was. And then that Sunday night, the people that had been coming to church, a few of them, they kind of looked at me and they said, well, what are we going to do? That was one of them said, well, what are we going to do? I said, I have no idea. I said, but I tell you what we'll do this Wednesday. We'll have a Bible study. And so that would have been last night. No. This is when I'm recording this. It's on a Tuesday. So tomorrow night on this week, the Wednesday night, the last week of the month, we had a Bible study. We had it at the home of Brian and Christy Hanley in Maryville. And then honestly, I can honestly tell you between that Wednesday night and that Sunday morning, there was just something happened inside of me. I don't know what to call it. There was, I guess it was the birth of a father spirit. I don't know. I don't know what it was. But come Sunday, come Sunday, on that Wednesday night, we just met. We had a Bible study, sang a few songs, and then by the Sunday morning, I had already told them that I wanted to call it High Praises Church. And the reason we called it, I'm sorry, we called it High Praises Baptist Church. And the reason we called it a Baptist church, I'm just going to be honest with you. It's not that I believed any different than I believe today. I've never changed my beliefs. Now, there's been some things God showed me. And I'm going to talk about some of that stuff today, quite frankly. I didn't tell you this is going to be a short video. So, but I had been attending a Baptist church. And so we called it a Baptist church. So come that Sunday, I got up and I said, and I had talked to some of the men, obviously, and found some spirits that were alike. And so we made a decision that we were going to start High Praises Baptist Church on the first Sunday of November of 1998. I had a little boy named Jackie Lee. I had a little baby boy named Kenzie Cole, and my wife LaDonna, and there was 18 of us all total. Of course, some of LaDonna's family was there, some of our friends and family was there, but 18 of us on the first Sunday of November of 1998. And so we just started. On that Sunday, we had a potluck. Everybody brought a dish. You know, you can't start a church without a potluck dinner. So I remember, and this is one thing I've always done. I've always been serious about my role as a pastor. We were in the basement of the house. I don't remember exactly all the furniture that was in there, but it was a basement of a house. They had a TV. They had a couch. It was their great room. It was just their house. And so we didn't have anything. We didn't have anything to start a church with other than a lot of desire to do something for God. And of course, we had some sound equipment. It was small, but we had some sound equipment because we had the little singing group. We didn't have chairs. I didn't have a preaching desk. I didn't have a music stand. So Brian and Christy had this chest of drawers in their basement, and I was looking around. I said, "Look at this. This is perfect." And I turned it around. It even had a little lip on the back of it. And I turned it around, and I used that for the first two services for High Praises Baptist Church. It was so sweet and so amazing. On that day, we just was talking while over lunch about, I was casting vision. I didn't know that's what I was doing at the time. And I get emotional simply because I look back now and I didn't know what I was doing. God's grace has been there for me and this church every step of the way. So I was casting vision, and I was talking about where I thought the church should be, and I was not short on ideas that day. So a wonderful man named Tom Green said, "I know where there's a piece of property," because I wanted it on the main road. I believed and still believe that location is so important. Location of where you live, where you work. God created places before he created people. So where you are matters. So I told him I wanted on 321. He said, I know where there's several acres. He said, I don't know if the old man will sell it or not, but let's go talk to him. When we went down there and pulled up on that property off of Farnham Street in Friendsville, Tennessee, when I stepped out, I just started weeping and crying. Just walked up to what I found out later used to be the garden area, the homestead. And I won't go through all the details, but we talked to Mr. Inslee. Roy Inslee was a wonderful, wonderful old man that believed in what we were doing. And so we bought that property. We started the process that week. I mean, we started the church on that first Sunday of November. And that week, we walked on that day. We walked on that property. And then that week we started the process and we bought that piece of property. We soon found a man out of Cleveland, Tennessee. His name will come to me because it was just there. He had built several churches around in the area, and Randall Fisher Construction, told you it would come to me. Mr. Fisher, we called him up. One of the men in our church called him up, and we met with him, and he had a plan. He said, you can build this building right here. And I mean, it was a package. It was perfect. I don't know of anybody else in this area personally that's built a church quite this way. I believe that God just ordained that for us to find him at that time, because he had built a few churches around toward the Cleveland, Chattanooga area. And basically what it was 125 foot long and 60 foot wide, prefab metal building. And he had plans already drawn out of how many it would seat, we got to pick a few different things like the carpet and you know, how certain things were laid out. But for the most part, he had a plan. And so we started out by having the bottom on one end. It had a upstairs and down. We couldn't really afford having the top finished at first. So we had the bottom finished, had a couple rooms, Sunday school rooms, whatever. Anyway, long and short of it, from 1990, the first Sunday of 98, we had the first service, and then that next Wednesday night service in Maryville at Brian and Christy Hanley's house. And then we moved to Tom and Vicki Green's house on Disco Loop Road in Friendsville. And we were there from the middle of November of 1998 until we had our last service on the first Sunday of the month in March of 2000. We went in, and Tom and Vicki were so amazing. They redid their whole basement just so we could have church. And they didn't just redo it. It was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. And we had the first few weeks while they were doing their basement, we had service in their living room. And it just grew and grew and grew. And we always had Sunday school. We always had Wednesday night. They never complained about anything, and I can't tell you how grateful I am to them today. But we went ahead and moved into our new building in March 12th of 2000, and it was so exciting. The first Sunday, I've got newspaper clipping somewhere where the newspaper was there, and they had this picture of me standing up there, and the house was absolutely crammed full of people. It was beautiful. And we just kept growing and kept going, and the vision of the church stayed the same. My mother-in-law at the time bought me a book on that Christmas, and it was called Purpose Driven Church. It was before Purpose Driven Life was even written. Purpose Driven Church. And I read that book. In that book, I gathered a lot of things. Some of them I still use today, 26 years later. But in that book, there was a phrase that I adopted because I was so excited about having a place where it didn't matter what you look like. Didn't matter what I remember when that phrase first came out of my mouth. We were in the basement at Tom Green's house, and uh, I said that, and I've said it ever since. It don't matter what you look like, act like, smell like, talk like. You're welcome at High Praises Church. And when you when you say that, when you say that, you better get ready, cause look out. And we it was just we I read that book. That's where I'm at. I got off in my mind a little bit. Read that book. I started saying it don't matter what you look like, act like, smell like, talk like. And then in that book I found where it said, now that phrase that I just said, it don't matter what you look like, that wasn't in there. This is what was in there. The main thing is to keep the main thing, the main thing. I don't know who said it first. I read it first in a book written by Rick Warren. I don't know who. He was quoting somebody, I think. I still got my book. I could go look it up. But nonetheless, the main thing is to keep the main thing, the main thing. And of course, I added, and that is the love of Jesus Christ, because that's what our church was to be built on. That's what God told us to build it on. We'd gone into some of those little churches, and them sweet little mean women would come up. I'm being nice by saying sweet. They'd come up and say, honey, you've sat in my seat. You're going to have to move. And I can remember one Sunday after we got in our new building, I mean, we were full almost from the beginning, and I'm so grateful to look back and think about that. But I had everybody, I said, stand up, grab your belongings, and switch sides. That's what youth will do for you. It'll have you have people doing stuff that they may not really appreciate you having them do. But I think it was tolerated because it was done from a heart of love. It was, and I think they knew it was. I'm not sure if anybody got mad. If you were there and you got mad, don't tell me. But so we just kept going, and yeah, the main thing has been to keep the main thing the main thing. And so we were there praying and seeking God. We were. I'm going to be honest about a couple things that I don't say them. I don't say these things today with animosity in my heart. I say them to tell you the story of High Praises Church for the last 26 years. From the very beginning, I would say, don't matter what you look like, act like, smell like, talk like. And I would say, we are a multicultural church. Every person in that room looked like I did as far as the color of their skin and their background. In all seriousness, I was speaking it, and now I know I was speaking by faith. And I knew then, but still, it's more, looking back, it's easier to see things because everybody, we were all white. We were all, we all came from kind of the same background, and there was no diversity in our church. But I began to proclaim while we were in the basement, long before we got to the first building, I began to proclaim that we are a multicultural church. It meant to me that all people were coming and all people were welcome at High Praises Church. And so I do want to tell this. The first time that I ever got my heart broke as a pastor is we had been going for several months, and we were almost ready to break ground. If we hadn't already broken ground, we were really close to breaking ground on the new building. We'd already purchased the property. We were so ready to. We'd already contacted Mr. Fisher and Fisher Construction, and and some people got sideways about something. And I really, today, I don't remember what they got sideways about, but I remember that they left the church. And I remember that some of the leadership came to me and they were mad at me because these people had left the church. And that's the first time that it broke my heart. It really did. And I've said this, and there's just been a couple times that I've questioned, and I'm being honest, probably a couple times that I've questioned whether or not I was going to quit. And that was one of them. Because LaDonna said it like this. She said, I really never thought about having enemies, or didn't really know I had enemies until we started pastoring, because it seemed like that when people would leave, and I'm going to be vulnerable and honest with you today, I probably didn't handle all of them right either. I will tell you something that I've always done. I've always tried to reach out to the people that leave. If I don't know why they're leaving, I've always tried to reach out and see if we could work it out. I still do that to this day. Now, if I know why they're leaving and they've made it clear, and I may not reach out because sometimes you have to use wisdom as to when. Not that they're not welcome to come back. That's the thing that I've always wanted to maintain with High Praises Church, and I still maintain today. If you've left High Praises Church and you're looking for a church and you feel compelled, don't let. First of all, if I've done something to you, please come to me and let's talk about it and let's work it out, because I know we can work through it. If we love God and God loves us, and I know he does, and we both want to work that, then you know what? We can work it out. But I did call the people. They left, and it was really hurtful. But I think it also let me get through that. Oh my God, I'll just quit. I'll just stop. And then I looked around and go, wait a minute, I can't. Because earlier in this video, when I talked about that father spirit being birthed, I think it was already there by this time. And I didn't quit. And we just kept going. We kept loving people. And then we got in our new building and we started seeing people that look different than us, from different backgrounds. Well, let me say this first. Not too long after we got in the building, I started getting wind of different pastors from different Baptist churches in that area. One particular, not too far down the road from where we were located, he made the statement, "They're just hiding behind that sign. They're not Baptist people." And so, you know what? I got to thinking and got to praying about it, and I figured out that he was correct. I'm not just a Baptist person. Still to this day, 26 years later, my only license as a preacher is through a Baptist church. So understand and hear what I'm saying. But I'm not just for the Baptist church. I'm not just for the Pentecostal church. I'm not just for the Presbyterian, Methodist, Foursquare, Holiness, Apostolic, Catholic. I'm not just for one of those churches. I'm for people, and people are in all of those churches. And all people are welcome at High Praises Church. And so I took it to the church, and there was two things we voted on that night. We voted to take Baptist off the sign, off the church, off the name, off the entity, and be called High Praises Church. And we also voted never to vote again. And we formed a council at that time, which now is my elders, which is in other language would be known as a board. And I won't go into all of the intricate detail of how we make decisions. If you want to know that, you can find that out in our next new membership class as you become a member of the church, because all of that is disclosed. But then, it was, and I don't know exactly what year it was. It was somewhere around 2002, 2003 that we became High Praises Church. And when we became High Praises Church, sure enough, they were right. Some people found out and didn't come because we were just a Baptist church. Some people didn't come anymore because we weren't just a Baptist church. So we just kept going and kept believing, and so we started seeing more people. we had a strong, very strong ministry to the streets, to the homeless people. James Coker uh, was such a wonderful, incredible part of our church for so many years, and I'm so thankful that I knew him. I'm so thankful that we were such close friends. We weren't so close the last several years of his life, and I regret that. Um, Not that I did anything to him, but I hate that happened. But he was a wonderful man, and I miss him. But he brought this ministry to our church, and of course, anytime anyone's ever brought a ministry idea, if it's helping people and growing the kingdom, I'm about it. And that's what this was doing. And we started taking socks to the streets, and we would give thousands of pairs of socks out on Thanksgiving. And then we started doing it on a regular basis. We started having service up there at Carm, which is a Knox area rescue mission. If you're not from this area, it's downtown Knoxville, Tennessee, because our church is in Maryville, and even Friendsville is not too far from Knoxville. So we're just out of the city of Knoxville. And so we started bringing different cultures in on the van. That's how we first started seeing people of different backgrounds come to High Praises Church. And when that started happening, people started getting uncomfortable. One thing that I learned, it's one thing to cast a vision. It's another thing to walk in the vision. And I cast that vision from the beginning, but until they saw it, I guess they didn't really believe it. One day I went up and I laid my hands on a man that was black and a woman that was white that were married, and I prayed for them and I blessed them and I honored them, and I got met at the back door as soon as church was over. I can't believe, what are you thinking? Why are you blessing that couple? I said, no, wait a minute. What are you talking about? And they told me that their beliefs on interracial marriage and all that. And I just, of course, I thought it was ridiculous. And I told him, I said, well, actually what I said to him, this is the part of me that wasn't maybe as refined as I am now. That means now I'm saying I'm refined. I said, what do you want me to do? Cuss them? I said, yes, I'm going to bless them. I said, that's the vision of our church, to bring people. And of course, he was gone and he never came back. I did reach out to him, by the way. He never came back. So in 2005, we decided that we had to do something. We either had to build another building, but to be honest, LaDonna and I were really feeling like we needed to move into Maryville. It would be, the vision of our church would be more easy to carry out and more accepted in more of a city environment. Well, if you know what Maryville, Tennessee is, it's certainly not a big city. It's a very, very quaint town, quite frankly. But it's still, being in Maryville would give us more ability and opportunity to carry out the vision of our church. So we just started praying, started looking, didn't know where we were going to get, if we could get. She and I decided to go on a 40-day fast. We fasted for 40 days. At the end of that fast, it was Christmas Day. We finished our fast on the 23rd of December of 2005. On January, I believe it was 31st, the last day of January of that year, whatever it was, we walked on 1601 East Broadway Avenue property, and I said, this is it. I hadn't felt that like that since the first Sunday in November of 1998, when I walked on that property in Friendsville. And when I walked on the property at 1601 East Broadway Avenue in Maryville, Tennessee, I felt it, and I knew it was the place. So we started the process. We got that building and had our first service, I believe it was, Well, I believe it was August 6th, but it was August of 2006. And we owned about 7 acres and several businesses in this strip mall. And God just kept adding to the church and blessing our church. And I feel like while we were at that location, we figured out who we were as a church. And it's not anything different than where we started. I'm going to say this about my preaching. And I've told this to so many young men and women that have come to me and said that they were called to preach. Figure out who you are and who you want to be and who God's called you to be in the ministry. And it may be different than what you were raised, because I was raised very, I love my heritage. I'm so thankful for my heritage. I'm so thankful for the churches and the pastors that I came from. But quite frankly, I was raised in churches that preached more against things than for things. And what I mean by that is I knew what I didn't believe, but there was a lot of stuff that I didn't know that I did believe, if that makes any sense. And in 2013, I may be jumping around. I'm trying to keep the timeline right, but maybe jumping around a little bit. In 2013, I went to my office and I said, God, I don't have peace. I need peace. Now, we'd seen hundreds, if not thousands of people saved. Doesn't mean that we didn't have the right heart. We'd seen the church grow, and God just put in continuity to things that he needed to do. It didn't mean the church didn't grow, but I wasn't exactly where I needed to be. And so I wasn't totally peaceful. And so I went to the Lord in prayer, and he showed me. I'm not a confrontational person. I'm not a person that tries to pick on people or looks down. I want people to win. I really do. Now, I've got beliefs, and I'm firm in what I believe, but I also don't think that I'm the only one right and everybody else wrong. I just believe what I believe because I can find it in the Word, and that's what I believe. And so I came to an understanding that day of my true calling, and the Lord reminded me, he said, you have been taught your whole life to dream. Now teach others to dream. So I remembered what my dad used to say when I was growing up. Don't cost a bit more to dream big than it does little, Jack. And so I wrote our current declaration that we say before I preach every Sunday. It don't cost a bit more to dream big than it does little. And the last line of it says, I'll dream big because I serve a big God. You know what? People mess up. People make mistakes. For instance, I used to preach that if you didn't tithe, you'd be cursed. I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. Why did I preach that? Because I've been taught that my whole life. I apologized to my church when I realized the error of my ways. I don't believe you're cursed. Now, if you don't tithe, you don't reap the benefits of tithing. And tithing is so important in your life. Jesus brought it into the New Testament. So it's not a forgotten thing. And yes, tithing is so important, and you should tithe. But if you don't tithe, it doesn't mean that not tithing brings a curse. But I will tell you, if you don't tithe, you don't have the promise of his protection like you do if you tithe. So there's some things that I changed. And man, I understand grace in a way I never understood it before. And I just started leaning in toward faith, understanding that faith is confidence that things exist other than what you see. And so that's where we got to where we are today. But in 2005, when we went on that fast, I didn't realize the life change that it was going to bring, because moving into the season that 1601 East Broadway Avenue brought us, there's just so many facets of that it's just amazing to me as I look back in my personal reflections. 2013, the spring, is when I went to the Lord. And when I did that, I told LaDonna, I said, for the next several weeks, I said, when I go, because I've never been a sit down behind my desk kind of guy. But I said, when I get here in the morning, I'm going to my office. And I said, you're welcome to come up. I said, but if you don't see me all day, I've just got an assignment. I read over 30 books. It was 30 something books that summer about faith, about confession, about believing, about being positive. And you say, oh, it's not about being positive. Tell Paul that. He said, if there's anything good, think on that. That's positive. So in November of 2013, LaDonna was having some health issues. So we went to the doctor. And I was sitting out because I didn't go back in the exam room with her, nothing like that. And I was sitting out and she came to the door. And I never will forget the look on her face. And I got that. And I went back there, and in November of 2013, the doctor looked across the table and said, you have cancer. 2016, I'm not even going through the next 2.5 years. That's another video, but it was awful. But yet God was so faithful. And in June of 2016, she went to heaven. And so here I was, the father of 3 children, because I left out the fact in 2002 we had a little baby girl. And I just, at first I thought, do I quit? Do I stop? But really, down deep, that was never an option. I looked at my kids and I told my church, I said, we're going to laugh all we can. We're going to cry every time we need to, and we're going to trust God. And that's what we did. Here's the part of this story that is not fun for me, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But in 2019, I remarried, and it was a mistake. It was, and this is not casting any shame on the other person. I made a mistake, and I married the wrong person. And the marriage lasted about a year, and we divorced. There you go. Not proud of that, but I'm also thankful for his grace. Now, with that, of course, there's a lot of people believes that I shouldn't be pastoring a church today. And they're entitled to their belief, but I have sought counsel, and I have talked to men of God, and I rely on the grace of God. And so I don't say that flippantly, but I didn't quit because of that. In 2023, to be honest with you, it was in December of 22 that I got to talking to my current wife, Heather. One of the reasons why I should have never gotten married the second time, and one of the reasons that marriage failed, number one, it shouldn't have ever happened, but I was not healed. I was so not healed. And I was still in the absolute grips of grief. And I made probably one of the biggest mistakes of my life. And so after that divorce, in early 21, it was January maybe of 21 when that was settled, or something like that, February. I leaned into the Lord, and to be honest with you, I even made the statement, I'll never be married again. I'm okay to live alone. And to be honest with you, I was peaceful. Was I lonely? There was plenty of that. But I was peaceful. And then, in December of 22, I did feel like that I was healed. and then in something that was hidden in plain sight became obvious. And I only say this not arrogantly that she approached me, but I say that I wasn't standing in the pulpit scanning and looking, but my current wife and the love of my life today, Heather, approached me, and we started talking, and we took a drive on Christmas night, 2022, and then here we are today. During the last year, Kenzie, in early part of 22, he moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Early on, after LaDonna left, he moved to California for a little while. He told me that when he got out there, he almost immediately knew that he needed to be back in Maryville. And I'm so thankful that he came, because that would have been in 2018, 2019, he started really walking into his own calling. And I'm not even pronouncing that, but what he's doing and the call that's on his life. And the church began to take a new, because the era of LaDonna and I leading the church had ended in 2016. And in 2018 or 19, whenever it was, he came back. It took a kind of a different turn, and it's been a beautiful turn, because Kenzie is truly an anointed man of God. He's my son, but he's truly an anointed man of God. And his ideas and his support to me as pastor doesn't mean that I probably have more intense fellowship with him than anybody, but at the end of the day, I love him, he loves me, and we trust one another. And so, but then in 21, in 22, he moved to Tulsa for 6 months. And I think God did an incredible thing in his life. And he met the love of his life. And so in 22, in 2023, Heather and I got married in August. And I can honestly say we've been in a transition since then. Not that the teaching has changed, but the landscape has changed somewhat. But today, I'm telling you, we have one of the strongest churches that we've ever been, spiritually, emotionally, and I'm so thankful for that. In early this year, we launched HPC Global. Farrah and Andy Dockery have been in our church 13, 14, 15 years, something like that. They are our online global pastors. Here we go into year 26. And I got to tell you that the only other time that I've thought about quitting is when Heather and I got together, and there was a few people that just didn't like it too good. And it was really discouraging, because some of it came from people that Satan always knows how to hit you, right? He always knows. And it surprised me, and it took me off guard. And but I love those people, and I don't have any hard feelings toward anyone today. And today I'm so excited about where we're going. As we get ready for this Sunday, it's not going to be a big hoopla, but we're going to celebrate, and we're going to click over, and we're going to keep going, and we're going to keep growing. This year, just this month, the month that we're in, I got a call from K-Love, and I have been one of their 7 featured pastors out of all of America. They found 7 guys. Well, I don't know if it's all guys, but 7 pastors. And what a great honor. And I'm so honored with that. Today, as we're doing this, just before I got on this live and on this YouTube, whenever you're watching this, I'm getting ready to publish my first book that I've finished. I've almost got my second book written. God is so good, y'all. I don't know everything that's going to happen in the future, but I know that we're going to go on. We're going to keeping the main thing, the main thing. And you know what? As we're recording this, we're on the precipice, if that's the word, of a very important election for our country. I don't know how that's going to turn out, but I know who's still going to be God at the other side of it. And I want the best for America. But my hope and how I move and how I live and how I think is not, it's not set by where America's at. It's set by what God says. Now, I'm affected by America, don't get me wrong, because I'm an American citizen, and I want it to be the best. I want it to flourish. I want it to prosper. I want it to, but I'm still going to trust God. We're still going to go on. We're going to love on and welcome people, no matter what they look like, act like, smell like, talk like. We're going to keep the main thing, and that's the love of Jesus Christ. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful year, stepping into our 26th year. And so, man, I've been talking for almost an hour and I've said a lot, but I wanted to just archive this day, and we're going to have this on the internet, and you're welcome to share it. I would love to invite you, if you're watching this, to follow and subscribe my personal page as well as High Praises Church page. I didn't sit down here with a script, so I probably talked about things that I didn't even mean to necessarily, but I don't regret telling you everything I have today, because it's the truth and it's part of the journey. And so let's just move forward. Let's just move upward. Let's just see wonderful things happening. Let's see those wonderful things happen. And let's continue to build the kingdom. I love you. And I hope that you have a wonderful day. And I hope this has been a blessing to you.